This week in Post, a few tips for processing your long exposure photos. Hi everyone, I'm Scott Davenport and welcome to In Post. Thanks for joining me today. Before I go into today's topic, I want to get your photo questions. If you've got questions about post-processing or photography in general, please hit me up, comment on the video below. You can contact me through my website as well if you want to keep that private. And I usually turn an answer around in a day or two. You don't have to wait around for another video to get an answer, but I may use your question on a future video. So today's topic is long exposure post-processing. And this came up to me because as I was working through one of the long exposures from the outing I shared with you on In the Field earlier this week, a few themes started to emerge. And so I want to kind of go through a few things that I realize I'm doing over and over again. Now with this exposure here, with this photo, I want to hit the backslash key first and show you just how underexposed this was. If you recall from In the Field, I had to stop this exposure early because the sun broke through the clouds there, and otherwise I would have had a lot more blown out in the scene. And that resulted in a huge amount of shadow area and the pilings of the pier and these little cabins out there. And so that meant I had to deal with the first thing of noise, right? So noise and shadow areas, we're familiar with that, right? That's not a long exposure type of noise. So dealt with that first, just standard noise reduction, or if you've got a specific tool that targets noise, you can use that, keeping it to the shadow areas. But the other kind of noise that shows up is hotspots on your sensor. So the sensor is open and collecting information for multiple minutes. In this case, this was, 428 seconds. So that 300 seconds is 5 minutes. So we're talking about somewhere around the 7-minute mark. So this is a long time for the sensor to be open. And what happens is we get hot pixels. And so what I'm going to do is zoom up into this upper right corner. And I am zoomed in at 2:1. So if you look at what we're looking like with the navigator here, Lightroom's going to have some trouble catching up because I have done a bunch of things to this photo. Come on, Lightroom. So we're just looking at this tiny space right up in this corner here. There's a lot of photo to go through here. But the reason I want to zoom in is just to the left of my cursor is an example of what one of these sensor spots look like. They're typically going to be red or blue. Sometimes I'll see green, but it's going to be one of those three, right? RGB all the way. And they're easily dealt with. Q key for the spot removal tool, and I'll hit that one. And while I'm waiting for Lightroom to do that one, you'll see why it's taking so long in a moment. There's another one just to the left of my cursor here. I'll take care of that one. And then I'll zoom back out to 100%. I'm going to press the H key once Lightroom catches up, and you can see just how many of these spots I had to deal with. As we would expect, lots of them in the shadowy areas, but plenty of hot sensor spots up in here. These larger circles, those are going to be just dust. You get your sensor a little bit dirty, you see dust. But the rest of those are dealing with really minute pieces of noise. Okay, so second tip is being easy on saturation or anything that does HSL. Notice the sky here. There are a lot of different colors here. This was towards sunset. The clouds are catching a variety of different bands of light. But because of the long exposure, these are stretched out over time, and the colors all weave in through here. And even here, you can almost see these rainbow patterns. Well, I've done nothing with HSL. What I would maybe normally do with a shot like this is try to take some of the blue channels and darken them and give the sky a richer color. But what happens is either too much or too little of the photo is adjusted, and I'm either changing colors I don't want to, or if they're trying to be too narrow, the scene takes on a very pixelated or jagged edge in some of the little nuances in color here. So really shying away from HSL, which brings me to my third tip, which is the tint. Tint and a soft touch of temperature are really useful to help correct any color imbalances. I'm going to bring up the radial filter because I had some problems with the ocean water down here. And you'll see I've got a couple of pins over here. I'm going to pick this one because it's the larger of the two. And notice what I'm doing. Okay, I'm pulling highlights back a little bit, but I'm really shifting temperature and tint and softening with clarity. Let me reset these three sliders. Actually, I just need the two, temperature and tint. I'll wait for Lightroom to catch up, but you're going to notice that there's going to start to be more pixelation in through here. There we go. Look at this really sharp line where the lighting changed significantly. And so we had some more amber oranges going on, but maybe 2 or 3 minutes prior, it was mostly overcast and blue, and that left this odd artifact here. Well, let me do undo number 1, undo number 2. That took care of our sliders. And once Lightroom catches up again, we'll be back to normal. So I've thrown a lot of local adjustments, radial filters, gradient filters, tons of spot removal. So I'm keeping Lightroom very busy each time I undo and redo or change a slider, which explains some of the slowness here. But there we go. So this gets nice and smoothed out. And I actually had to do that twice because this area here was a little bit of a different color gradation. But using the range masks was able to focus those things in. So those are the tips. And I guess really the tip of the week, if I had to pick one, is that tint and temperature are good controls when you've got a very colorful yet long exposure scene. So the colors are all blending together. If you need to correct things, try out tint and temperature first. That may be just the trick to fix up your photo. And that's going to do it for this week's In Post. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, please let me know somehow. Comment on the video below. Questions are great. I still want to get your photo questions. And until next time, my name is Scott Davenport, and happy shooting.